The one AC hack that cuts your summer power bill in half. Explained simply. You have seen the video. Some guy with a ring light holds up a little plastic box, plugs it into the wall next to his breaker panel, and tells you this one thing cuts your power bill in half. Maybe you bought it. $15, $20, prime shipping. Plugged it in right next to your thermostat exactly like he told you to. And your bill this year still landed close to what the average American household is now paying to stay cool all summer, somewhere around $792 just in cooling costs. That box did nothing. Not a percent, not a penny. What nobody selling that box tells you is what it's actually supposed to do, and once you know that, you'll understand exactly why it was never going to touch your bill. I want to walk you through that, and then give you the version of this that's actually true, because there is one change that gets a house close to cutting its cooling bill in half. It's just not the one they sold you. I spent 35 years wiring homes and setting condensers on concrete pads in July heat, and I got the calls in August when people's bills doubled and nobody could explain why. So let's get into what actually works, ranked from stuff that costs you nothing straight through to the one move that's expensive but honest. So how does a box with an LED and a tiny capacitor end up with millions of views promising to cut a bill in half? The idea it's built on isn't even fake. Power factor correction is a real electrical principle. Big industrial buildings, factories running motors and heavy equipment actually do get billed for something called reactive power, and correcting that power factor can save them real money. But that billing structure applies to commercial and industrial accounts. You and I, sitting in a regular house, get billed on straight kilowatt hours, the actual energy we use. A capacitor sitting in an outlet in your hallway isn't touching that number because it isn't measuring anything you're billed on in the first place. It's not that the physics is fake. It's that somebody took a real principle from one part of the electrical world and sold it into a part of the electrical world where it does nothing. Air conditioning is not some minor line item you shave off with a gadget anyway. According to the Energy Information Administration, cooling makes up somewhere close to 1/5 of a typical home's total electricity use in a hot year. That's a strange amount of your own house to be paying to cool by accident. And it means any real fix has to actually change how your compressor runs, not sit next to your thermostat blinking a little green light at you. Here's the honest map of where the real gains live. Some of it is free, some of it costs you an afternoon, and one move, the one that actually gets you close to that half you were promised, costs real money, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I'll tell you exactly when it makes sense and when it doesn't, and I'll put it right in the middle of this video where the important stuff belongs, not buried at the end where nobody sticks around to hear it. Let's start with the free one, because it's sitting on your wall right now, and most people fight it instead of using it. The Department of Energy's own guidance on setback thermostats says you can save as much as 10% a year on heating and cooling just by moving your thermostat back 7 to 10 degrees for 8 hours a day from your normal setting. That's not a marketing number pulled from a product page. That's the federal agency that runs the efficiency numbers on every appliance sold in this country. For summer cooling specifically, the department's rule of thumb lands around 1% of your cooling cost for every degree you adjust over that 8-hour stretch. Researchers at the University of Georgia, who study exactly this for a living, put the summer number a bit higher, closer to 3% per degree, because a cooling load responds faster to a temperature swing than a heating load does. Either number you use, that's real, stackable savings from turning a dial you already own. DOE recommends 78 degrees when you're actually home and awake in summer, and higher than that when nobody's there. And here's the detail that everyone missed at the time this myth started spreading. Cranking your thermostat down to 60 degrees the second you walk in sweating does not cool your house any faster. Your air conditioner runs at the exact same speed no matter what number you punch into that display. All you're doing is telling it to keep running long after the house actually hits a comfortable temperature, which means you're paying to cool air you don't even want yet, which, in plain terms, just means you're paying to wait. Setting it colder isn't a shortcut to comfort. It's just a more expensive way to sit around for the same result. Now pair that thermostat discipline with a ceiling fan, and DOE says you can raise your set point about 4 degrees with zero loss in comfort, because moving air across your skin makes you feel cooler even when the actual room temperature hasn't changed a bit. But here's the catch that gets skipped in every one of those quick listicle videos. Fans cool people. They do not cool rooms. A ceiling fan spinning away in an empty bedroom isn't saving you a thing. It's a 50-watt appliance quietly adding a little heat to that room while nobody's even in there to feel the breeze. Turn them off when you leave. That's the entire rule, and it's the one step people forget the most. That was only round one. The next tier cost you a Saturday morning instead of nothing. And it's the stuff that gets ignored right up until the system starts struggling in the middle of a heat wave. A dirty air filter is the single dumbest way people bleed money in July. Department of Energy guidance puts the hit at 5 to 15% more energy use from a clogged filter, because your system has to work that much harder just to pull air through it. I've pulled filters out of return vents that looked like they'd been used to strain gravel. The homeowner always says the same thing, that they meant to change it back in the spring. A filter costs less than a fast food lunch for 2. Check it monthly in summer, swap it when it looks gray instead of white. And that alone often pays for itself before the next billing cycle even closes. Then there's the stuff under the hood that I want you to hire out, not tempt yourself with a socket set and a Saturday afternoon. A dirty condenser coil, that's the outdoor unit humming away on the concrete pad, can knock a meaningful chunk off your system's efficiency because it simply can't shed heat the way it's designed to. And refrigerant charge matters more than most people think. Peer-reviewed testing on residential systems has shown that even a modest undercharge, somewhere around 5% low, can drop a unit's efficiency by roughly 6%. And a bigger undercharge digs a much deeper hole than that. Here's where I put my electrician hat back on for a second. Checking and adjusting refrigerant charge means working with pressurized refrigerant lines, and it's frequently tied into 240-volt equipment at the disconnect. That's not a project for a YouTube tutorial and a multimeter you bought last week. Call a licensed HVAC technician for an annual tune-up, follow your local code, and let them pull the actual gauges. One visit a year protects your system's efficiency and keeps your warranty intact. And honestly, it's the cheapest insurance policy on this entire list. And this is where I want to pay off what I promised you at the start, because we're at the point in this video where the free stuff and the maintenance stuff have both had their say. Now it's time for the one that actually gets you close to that half. If your air conditioner is old, and I mean genuinely old, the kind installed back when a 10 SEER rating was considered perfectly fine, replacing it with a modern high-efficiency system is the only honest path to cutting your cooling energy close to half. This isn't marketing math. It's basic efficiency ratios that any technician can walk you through on the back of a service invoice. Moving from a 10 SEER unit up to a 16 SEER 2 system realistically cuts cooling energy by somewhere around 40%. Push all the way up to a 20 SEER system, and you're looking at something closer to 50%. Because SEER is a direct measure of cooling output per unit of electricity, and roughly doubling that rating roughly halves what you spend to move the same amount of cool air through your house. Ductless mini-split heat pumps push this even further because they skip duct losses entirely and use variable speed compressors that ramp smoothly up and down instead of just snapping on and off at full blast. And the best models on the market now carry ratings above 30 SEER 2. That's not a gimmick. That's an inverter-driven compressor sized to exactly the room it's cooling, instead of blasting full power at a house that's already comfortable. I want to be straight with you about the trade-off here because I'm not selling you anything and I don't have a link in the description. A full system swap runs real money, and if your current unit is under 10 years old and running fine, you will not recoup that investment fast enough for this to be your first move, not by a long shot. But if your unit is old, if a technician has already told you the compressor's on its last legs, if you're already staring down a repair bill that rivals what a new coil would cost, that's the moment this stops being a luxury upgrade and becomes the smartest dollar you'll spend on this house all year. And any 240-volt equipment swap, any new circuit, any disconnect work at the condenser, that's licensed electrician and HVAC contractor territory. Full stop, no exceptions. Pulling the right permits and following your local code on that install protects you, and it protects the lineman working your street who has no idea what's happening behind your meter. This decision seemed small the first time a homeowner told me they'd just keep patching an old unit one more summer. It wasn't. Every patched repair on a dying system is money that never goes toward the fix that would have actually worked. And I've stood in enough garages watching someone hand a technician another $200 for a Band-Aid on a unit that was never coming back from it. Everything that old 10-SEER unit had going for it when it went in, the low upfront cost, the simple fixed-speed compressor, the parts every tech in town could source in an afternoon, was about to work against the homeowner who kept it running past its prime. That's the trap. The thing that made it cheap to buy is the exact thing that makes it expensive to keep. If that sounds like the whole story, keep watching, because there's a piece hiding inside your walls that's costing most homeowners more than that old air conditioner ever did. But this wasn't just about the compressor anymore. The ductwork feeding that compressor's cold air through your house had its own story to tell, and it's the part almost nobody thinks to ask about. Energy Star's own data on duct sealing says that in a typical home, 20 to 30% of the air moving through your duct system is lost before it ever reaches a single vent, leaking out through gaps, holes, and poorly sealed joints tucked away in your attic or crawl space. Sit with that for a second. You could own the most efficient air conditioner on the market and still be paying every single month to cool your attic instead of your living room. Sealing that up matters, and how you seal it matters just as much. Use mastic sealant or metal-backed tape, not the cloth stuff with the fabric weave, because Lawrence Berkeley National Lab testing found that cloth duct tape fails, and often fails badly, within just a couple of years in real attic conditions. Sealing your ducts properly is one of the highest return projects most homeowners never even think to check because it's invisible. Nobody sees a leaky duct joint, they just see the bill. Pair that with air sealing and insulation, and the EPA's Energy Star program puts the average savings at around 15% on heating and cooling costs from sealing gaps around windows, doors, and attic penetrations, then topping up insulation wherever it's gone thin over the years. Closing blinds and curtains during peak sun hours cuts heat gain too. No tools required, just a habit. And a west-facing window in the late afternoon sun is doing more damage to your bill than most people realize until they actually feel the glass. And if your utility bills you differently based on time of day, pre-cooling your house before the afternoon peak, letting it run a touch cooler in the morning so the compressor can rest during the expensive hours, has shown real savings in field studies. National lab research found that in a well-sealed, well-insulated home, pre-cooling could avoid nearly all afternoon air conditioning use during the priciest hours of the day. But that same research found other homes saw only modest savings, sometimes none at all, because a leaky, poorly insulated house just can't hold that morning coolness long enough to matter. That one only pays off if you're actually on a time-of-use rate and your house holds temperature well enough to coast through the afternoon. Check your actual utility bill before you build a whole new routine around a trick that might not even apply to your plan. If you're finding this useful, go ahead and hit subscribe because I cover the honest version of this stuff every week. No affiliate hype, no gadgets, just what actually holds up under a technician's flashlight. Now let's get into the part of this video I think you actually came for, the stuff that's been quietly lying to you. Those plug-in energy saver boxes, the ones promising to cut your bill by some huge percentage just by stabilizing your power, don't stop at being useless. The real question isn't why that box has a little glowing light on it, it's why nobody selling it ever explains what power factor actually means before taking your $20. In the UK, where regulators actually went after these things, Electrical Safety First put a batch of them through independent lab testing and found, in their words, hazardous safety failures for all products tested, and all manufacturers' energy-saving claims were shown to be unjustified. That's not a company being cautious. That's an independent lab finding fire risk baked into products people were plugging into the same outlets as their phone chargers. And if that were the only problem, these boxes might have quietly survived on the internet a while longer. But then trading standards officers in Surrey ran their own field tests and found electrical consumption actually increased while using some of them, the exact opposite of what the packaging promised. The UK's product safety regulator went further still and issued formal recalls on specific models over shock and fire risk. The federal notice that follows here in the United States makes the whole picture worse. The Federal Trade Commission has a standing rule on the books originally issued back in the 70s and revived under their penalty offense authority in 2022. That makes it a violation to falsely represent expected fuel or energy savings or to advertise savings consumers won't actually realize. So if it plugs into an outlet and promises to slash your bill, at best, it does nothing at all. And at worst, it's a small fire hazard sitting quietly in your wall socket. And while we're clearing out the nonsense, let's kill the ice cube trick too, the one where people freeze water bottles or set out a bowl of ice in front of a box fan and call it a homemade air conditioner. This one isn't a scam exactly. Nobody's charging you $20 for a bag of ice. It's just a genuine misunderstanding of how a house actually loses and gains heat. And it's worth walking through slowly because the mistake is an easy one to make. It'll feel nice on your face for about 10 minutes. It will not cool your house, and here's why: that's simple physics, not opinion. Making that ice in your freezer pulls heat out of the water and dumps that heat right back into your home through the freezer's exhaust. And your freezer isn't perfectly efficient doing it, so in a lot of cases, you're putting more heat back into the house than the ice ever removes in front of that fan. A small window unit moving real cooling capacity would need to melt something in the neighborhood of 800 pounds of ice a day just to match what it does with an actual compressor running around the clock. Nobody's kitchen freezer is producing 800 pounds of ice, and if yours somehow is, you have a bigger problem than your power bill. It's a perfectly fine trick for cooling your own face on a hot afternoon. It is not a substitute for anything mechanical, and it will not move your bill by a single dollar. Now, if you do want a piece of technology that actually earns its keep, a smart thermostat is worth naming honestly, with real numbers instead of marketing ones. Energy Star certified models, and I mean the actual field verified figures here, not the number printed on the box, average around 8% savings on heating and cooling, or roughly $50 a year for a typical household. That's a long way off the 20% or more you'll see quoted on a manufacturer's product page, because those bigger numbers come from best-case installs with perfect geofencing and a homeowner who never once touches the schedule. And that override habit matters more than people give it credit for. Independent research on programmable thermostats has found that a majority of owners end up manually overriding their schedule often enough to erase most of the built-in savings, which is exactly why a model that quietly learns your habits instead of demanding you program it correctly tends to hold up better once real life gets involved. Ecobee's premium model, Google's Nest Learning Thermostat, and Honeywell's T6 Pro all sit in a reasonable price range and do the job well. Even a budget option like the Amazon Smart Thermostat, which is built on Honeywell's own internal hardware, is ENERGY STAR certified and handles the basics just fine. Just check for a C-wire behind your existing thermostat before you buy one, because that single missing wire is the #1 reason DIY smart thermostat installs stall out on a Sunday afternoon. So here's the honest stack all the way through, no gadgets required. Thermostat discipline and a ceiling fan cost you nothing and save real, measurable percentage points every single month. A clean filter and an annual professional refrigerant check protect the efficiency you already paid for when you bought the system. Sealed ducts and proper insulation stop you from accidentally cooling your attic instead of your living room. And if your system is old enough that it's genuinely on its way out, replacing it with a high SEER 2 unit or a mini split is the one move that gets you legitimately close to the number the internet promised you for free. None of these multiply together into some magic 50% on a brand new efficient system already running well in a tight, well-sealed house. But stacked on an older, leakier home, thermostat behavior plus real maintenance plus proper sealing plus an eventual equipment upgrade adds up to something that would actually make that viral title true. Just not overnight, and not from a $15 box you bought on impulse at 2 in the morning. The real question was never whether your bill could drop. It's whether you're willing to fix the boring stuff first, the filter, the duct joints, the 78-degree setting, before someone sells you a shortcut that skips all of it and calls it a hack. If this saved you from buying the next gadget that shows up in your feed, that's the whole job done right. I'll see you in the next one.